Once upon a time, there lived a man in the remote African village of Ogeni by the name Okamgba. Okamgba was popularly known and respected during his lifetime because he possesses a great skill which was rare during his time. He was a renowned wrestler that has ever lived in the history of Ogeni land. By his so many victories, his fame had traveled far and near that even both man and spirits feared him. Through his wrestling skill, Ogeni land has gained so much glory and fame in the eyes of the neighboring kingdoms. A man of his word, a man that has continually brought victory and protection to the people of Ogeni land. A hero of their land, kings and princes speak of his name with dignity. Women sang his praises, fellow men hide to save their skin. When Okamgba walked the wrestling arena, he was a man raised by the gods. With an extraordinary strength for fight and wrestling, he had never lost in any wrestling competition, and as a result of his rare skill, Okamgba was highly placed in the eyes of his people and beyond. He never lacked for the people of Ogeni provided for him annually. The name Okamgba, the one that defines wrestling, is a name that took over his real name, Amazuilo, a name given to him by his people and all that bears witness to his greatness. Okamgba came from a humble background. He was known to be a hard-working husband to a beautiful woman, Obiageli by name, and two lovely children, a boy and a girl. The family was envied because he made his home an epitome of peace and harmony. While alive, the wife and children has constantly enjoyed the peace and protection he brought to his household. He was not easily given to anger, as some like him will normally do. One of his virtues that made him stand out among equals. He was humble and playful, that one can easily be misled because of his humble nature. So both his family and the Ogeni land at large have to enjoy peace and progress, for any victory he brought comes with a great reward for his community. But one day, a day that seemed like every other day of their lives, things drastically changed to the worst. Disaster struck, and this great man of his people came crashing down like a huge Iroko tree. His fall did not only affect his household, but the entire Ojene kingdom and beyond was heavily devastated. It was a horrific nightmare that everyone in that community had continued to pray that they will soon snap out of it, but it never happened. It was more than a reality. During his time, Okamgba was hired by other kingdoms to fight and subdue their enemies. He had so much brought victory that at some points his opponents gathered for him. Unknowingly to him, he was making too many enemies than friends. Evil men who likes to subdue and take the weak for a prey saw him as a very big threat that needs to be dealt with. But Okamgba had continued to win every match until that fateful day, the day that the cloud gathered and thickened but couldn't yield its rain, the day the people of Ojeni was defeated, the day the unimaginable happened. It was the day Okamgba was defeated in a wrestling match. On that very day, Okamgba, with the help of his bodyguard and flute bearer, had taken time to prepare for the wrestling match. It was a huge match, unlike any other match the Ogeni people have witnessed before. A lot is at stake. Not only will the winners go home with a huge material gain, but the weaker opponents will become a slave, both him and his entire kingdoms. As a result, a vigorous training was carried out as this great man prepares for that great day. The king of the land has taken it upon himself to see that no mistake was made. It will be a disaster if there will be any. Therefore, a lot of sacrifice was performed as Okamgba prepares relentlessly for the match. He was moved from his home to the palace of the king to avoid any mistake. One major thing to avoid before a wrestling match is having an intimacy with the opposite gender. It is believed to have crippled many warriors before their time. So whenever a wrestling day draws near, he leaves his home to stay at his quarters in the palace. Every wrestling day in Ogeni land comes with its unique aura. The excitement can be felt easily as the Ogeni people wait with a great anticipation. A week before the actual day, the young women and men of the village will be seen parading the whole villages with a colorful costume to celebrate this great man as the drums and flute player leads the way. It was easy to feel the energy, the excitement that lingers and had continued to linger even after the match. But the day turned sour for Ogene people that both humans and animals felt the loss. Instead of the usual shouts of victory, a cry for help and defeat was heard. Before walking to the village square for the match, the king and the chief priest had gone into Okamgba's chamber to bless him. He knelt down on both knees, and the two great men took turns to shower him with blessings. He was then ready and all matched with him. Okamgba was to wrestle with one of the most powerful wrestlers of another kingdom, Izaga, a man feared by all. Just like Okamgba, he had also continually brought victory to his people. He was known to be cruel and never spared his opponents during a match. All these and more did Okamgba heard, but was willing to accept his challenge. The day King Osisoma brought the issue of him wrestling with the great Izaga to the table. Before the match, the two kings have challenged each other. The winner automatically becomes the ruler, while the opponents become the slave, an agreement more powerful and risky than any challenge they have agreed on before. And while the great champion marched gallantly towards the wrestling arena, the land of Ogeni boomed with activities as the gun sound stirs the air. A sign of a great happenings. The expectation was high. There's so much at stake. But Okamba was determined, confident. On nearing the arena, he took to his heels and ran towards the square. The excitement filled the air, the cheers and the booms all together heated up the whole place when he stormed in his glory, defying every eye as he stood facing his opponents who had already arrived and patiently waited for him. And as soon as Okamba entered, Izaga was furious and ran straight to him, but was restrained. By the judges, the two kings once again revisited their agreements and nothing was changed. And on hearing the sound of Ikoro drums, the wrestling began. The people cheered and clapped. The tension was high. The kings could barely contain their buttocks on their seats as they paced up and down the arena. Women cried and giggled. As usual, Okamba was at his best. He stood strong like an elephant trunk as his opponents attacked him viciously. But when the match was nearing an end and Okamba was still battling to bring down his opponent, Izaga, fear began to sneak into their hearts. It will be an abomination to come to our town and still take the glory. The king had kept muttering as he walked up and down nervously. Whatever needs to be done. High priest, he pleaded, please do offer more sacrifices to the gods. I smell a foul play, my king. The chief priest uttered, head bent. What? What foul play? But as soon as the chief priest was about giving an answer, a loud scream was heard, and on looking, both men were shocked as they watched Okamba trying to lift himself up from the ground. His countenance looked troubled, as if a power stronger than him had gotten a better part of him. And as soon as the crowd saw Okamgba fell, the people screamed and took to their heels. But they were already surrounded and was captured. The people of Ogeheni were subdued. The king was caught and restrained with others. As their enemies rejoiced, "What have you done, Okamba?" The king furiously snarled as Okamba was being led away, now a slave. "My lord, there's a conspiracy," Okamba groaned, answering back. He was devastated and confused at the same time. The people cried for him because they never saw that kind of look on his face before. "There's a foul play, believe me," he continued shouting, not moving an inch as he was being forced to move. He was chained in both hands as they led him away. "What foul play? Wasn't he your match, Okamgba?" the king furiously queried, hatred and betrayal filling his eyes. "The man was like a breeze, my king. He wrestled me with a strong charm." Okamba sorrowfully tried to explain. "I have never lost a match, my king. Please believe me," he continued pleading. "You have sold your people to slavery. Nothing seems the way they look, my king." Okamba once again pleaded. "Izaga came in with a charm and is against the rule," he screamed this time around. "You fool," the king snarled. "How dare you talk to me that way?" He groaned and gave Okamba a hot slap. "You're a disgrace, Okamba," the king cried out as Okamba raised his head in sorrow and screamed. "Gods of my fathers, help me," he lamented as they led him away in a shameful way. And that was how the once feared and reverenced hero Okamba was destroyed. He was taken into slavery, both him and his town. The wife, on seeing what has happened, has collapsed and was hurriedly taken away by their captors. On that day, his family was torn apart. His children was devastated on seeing what has befallen both parents. It was the day darkness enveloped Ojani land. And that was how Ogene land was subdued. On that day, the land lost its savor. The atmosphere became grey. Ogene land groaned and trembled at the sight of their captors. They were stripped bare of all their wealth and forced to serve and do whatever they were commanded to do. They tilled the land and do all sorts of vigorous works. It broke the weak among them, a plan carefully calculated by their enemies to reduce their number and continue to keep them in their captivity. And so life became unbearable. The king was broken. He became less than a commoner. It hurt him more because his kingship was stripped from him, and Ogene people were moved from their original lands of their fathers to where their enemies allotted to them. They all lived in the same area as slaves. When Okamba fell, he was taken away for the fear that he might cause harm and break free. Okamba was seriously beaten and locked up in a hidden shade to wait until his fate is decided. But he never allowed his enemies to decide his fate. Rather, he decided his own fate by himself. Okamba committed suicide. In those days, men like him would rather kill themselves rather than swallow the shame. He couldn't take it, not because he was defeated alone, but because Okamba felt betrayed by the king. It was the fear of the king's betrayal that compelled him to take his own life. The day the king slapped and spit on his face as he was being dragged away was the day he died. And that was how Ogeni people lost this great man. The news of his death has spread like a wild raving fire. The entire Ogeni people was shaken to their core. The chief priest, on hearing the news, had wept uncontrollably. Ogeni failed him. He cried out in pain. The king could not raise his head up. His behavior towards him on that day was glaring. The people of Ogeni has hated him for that. He was vehemently questioned by the chief priest on why he failed to stand with the man that has risked his life for his people on several occasions. But he failed us. The king has responded, wanting to defend himself. He failed you when I told you myself that I smelt a foul play. No, my king, you failed him, the angry old man has snarled, before they were all captured. And while Ojini people mourned silently for their deceased hero, Okamgba's family was devastated. The wife was reunited with her household. But just like any other family in Ojeni land, their lives were halted. On hearing the news of their father's demise, their hope was shattered, their lives shaken. Fear became their companion. The wife tried her best to console her household, but the shock was too much to handle. The family were not only crying that he died, but what grieves them most is the type of calamity that befell him. Suicide is not permitted in Ogoni land. It is considered an abomination, an ugly dent to the family of the one that took his or her life. The deceased is not given a proper burial, no tears for him, but is thrown to the evil forest to cleanse the family of an calamity that will come to haunt them later as a result of such death. It was a curse not only for the dead man, but for the whole family. The family wished that his death would have happened differently so that he can receive a befitting burial fit for a hero like him. And that was how Okamba's life was ended in a most horrific way. Time passed and life began to return to normal. The Ogene people swallowed their pride and humbled themselves to their captors. Okamba's family never became what it used to be when he was alive. Before his death, his son was already married and was expecting, but it didn't happen in his presence. Ikenna lived together with his mother, his wife, and his younger sister. After his father's death, he walked the streets aimlessly to find closure. He felt lost in a huge world. The thought of his father killing himself has haunted him always. Why would he do that? He will question his younger sister. I'm beginning to think that he never thought of us. I know you're hurting. The sister, Odinaka, will plead. The people failed him. She will respond, tears filling her eyes. And he failed us. The brother will lament bitterly. By your constant crying, you've wearied our mother. The sister will warn, and that somehow will do the trick. He will suddenly stop and wipe away his tears. This has continued until he started having the spirit of his father visit him in a dream. In that dream, he will see him seated in a corner looking sad. Ikenna then will walk up to him and begin to lament. Why, Father? He will cry and lament. Why did you abandon us? Answer me. He will demand anger and sorrow mixed together, tearing him apart. Why did you kill yourself? Does it worth it? Okamgba, he would scream and then wake up panting and sweating profusely. This has continued for several weeks. The same dream, the same silent from his father. For in all those visitations, he never spoke a word to his son. He will only gaze at him, no response, no reaction. He will stand in a corner, looking sad. Until one day, it was in a hot afternoon. Somehow Ikenna, being fed up with everything going on in their lives, has decided to go inside the hut and lay down. Both the wife and his mother and sister were sitting outside carrying out domestic chores when he went inside to rest, and as soon as his back touched the mud bed, he went into a trance, and once again he saw his father and as usual began to cry and lament. But something strange happened, because when he demanded an answer as before from his father, he suddenly responded, "I will return." He quietly said, "Did you say you will come back, father?" "Yes, my son. I will return to you, to me." Ikenna hurriedly asked, his gaze on his father's face. "Yes," he said, and gently started walking away when Ikenna unknowingly screamed. Out of his sleep, his scream was so loud that it made his family came running to him, his wife seated by his side, her hand on his shoulder. "Did you see him again?" she quietly asked as everyone watched. Ikenna was still shaking and couldn't talk. "Yes, I did," he softly said when he has quietened down. "The same kind?" the mother asked. "The same mama, but," he added, pausing. "But what, my son?" the mother questioned impatiently. "He spoke, he did?" the mother firmly questioned, curiosity eating her up. "Yes, mama," Ikenna answered, getting excited. "And what did he say?" They all chorused together. "He said he will return." "Is that his exact word?" the mother curiously asked. "He said he will return, mama," Ikenna answered, thoughts clouding his mind. "Return?" They all chorused, their faces filled with thoughts. And indeed, he returned for a month after Ikenna's encounter in the dream. His wife took in, and everyone rejoiced. This is their first child in few years after their marriage. Something great that has happened. After Ojeni land fell, the news was celebrated. The family rejoiced and waited for the arrival of the special baby, because they buried the words of their father in their hearts. He will return was his exact word to his son, Ikenna. But things changed when it was time for the wife to deliver, and she gave birth to a baby girl. To all their shock, both mother and daughter are sound and in good health, the midwife has announced. Excitedly not knowing what the family is expecting, Ikenna, on hearing a baby girl, was thrown off balance. "A girl?" he questioned the midwife. "Yes, sir, your mother has graced your presence," the midwife added, not noticing anything. All of them in that family was disappointed, because it was like the prophecy of a boy has failed. But what could they do than to welcome the newest arrival of the family with their whole heart? Although the birth was not as expected, the prophecy seemed to have failed, but it was a good thing that the child arrived at that time of their lives. Since the day Ojene people lost their dignity, no shout of joy was ever heard. The coming of that little baby somehow has broken the curse, for the people of Ojene rejoiced with the family of the deceased hero. The birth brought so much joy to the family, and for the first time in a year, their mind was preoccupied with taking turns to love and care for the little baby. The father seemed like someone walking on a moon. He couldn't be proud enough, even if it's not a boy. As expected, one thing is sure, the inability to conceive has been ruled out. Ikenna, just like his father, has indirectly taught him on how to love and care for his family, did his best to see that the child is being taken good care of. Nothing was lacking, and few months after her birth, the family began to notice a slight change in the baby. Baby Ezije started adding a lot of weight, an unusual one that kicked the attention of her parents and everyone around her. At first, they all believed it was normal for a baby that is healthy and well breastfed to add so much weight. But when she continued adding, as if she's gaining weight every day, fear began to creep into their heart. "She's going to be sick," the father had complained after carrying her one day. "She was only 3 months. I could barely lift her up," he has complained, looking concerned. "There's nothing to worry about, my son," the mother will comfort. "I've seen babies add so much weight. Although not like her, I'm sure. She will shed her weight when she's weaned, she will conclude. But that did not happen because baby Ezije continued to gain more weight to everyone's shock. She was 3 months old, but looked like a 6 month old. And as if the weight gain is not enough, the family also discovered that baby Ezije can lift objects that babies her age cannot dare lift. At 3 months, she can sit properly without any assistance. It was like her weight gain is not a thing of concern, for she carries herself as one that is weightless. She's in perfect good health and bubbling with laughter all the time, which seems to calm the atmosphere in the household, giving no room for worries. The child grew, and the family gradually began to accept her. The way she looks, so long as there's no threatening health issues, the mother will say there's nothing to worry about, she will conclude. But lifting an object, how do one explain that? The father would ask, looking baffled. Something is not right, Ikenna will suddenly blurt out. It's strange. Yes, it's strange, my son, the mother will say, totally agreeing with his son. The signs were glaring. Ezije exhibits strange signs that cause for concern. Already the father has made up his mind. To inquire from the chief priest, he had tried to ignore the signs, but the more he ignored it, the more the signs surfaced. He was sure there's something more than what their eyes are seeing, and was ready to visit the dibia, but was surprised on coming out his hut that very day, and the dibia stood gallantly in front of his compound, a stern look on his face. Ikenna was shocked to see the elderly man. Thoughts swept through his mind immediately. Why is he here? Was all he could ask. Where is the child? The elderly man asked before Ikenna could say a word. You mean my daughter, chief priest? Ikenna stuttered. Are you surprised, my son? The chief priest sternly asked, a grin on his face. I hope all is well, Nze. Ikenna asked, fear written on his face. Bring her to me, the chief priest commanded in a high tone. His voice sounded more like a thunder, and at that point the whole family came running out to see what was going on, for his loud voice had startled them. But just as Ikenna was about hurrying in to get his child, to everyone's surprise, the baby began to crawl. But not only did baby Ezije crawl, but she crawled to everyone's amazement and went directly to the chief priest. And on reaching there, something strange happened, because Ezije all of a sudden began to scratch the ground like a cat will do. The little baby repeated the sign to everyone's shock, just like a wild cat would draw a line with its paws. It was not an ordinary sign. It was a sign known by every living soul in Ogene land that has lived before the death of the great Okamgba. It was the same signature move of that fallen hero before every wrestling match. No one has never done that except Okamgba. So when they all watched and saw the little baby demonstrate the same move, their eyes of understanding were opened, and they were sure their father, the great Okamgba, has returned as a girl. He has kept to his word. The prophecy finally has come to pass, and his family couldn't have felt any prouder. Welcome, warrior, the elderly man gallantly greeted, looking at the baby as Ezije continuously focused her gaze on the old man. No, warrior, the elderly man muttered again, and this time he gently picked the child at everyone's astonishment and blessed her, raising her up to the sky and speaking words of greatness into her. I'm sure you knew why I'm here, he suddenly asked, turning his gaze to Ikenna, who was standing beside him. Take care of him, my son, he added, handing the child back to his father. I will, Nzi, Ikenna hurriedly answered, tears filling their eyes as the elderly turned and was about to walk away, but suddenly stopped and once again spoke. This time he will finish what he started. You see, they all chorused as the man stormed away, leaving them in their bewilderment. And from that day on, extra caution was taken as concerning how the little Ezije was being treated. The day the chief priest graced their home, explained all the strange occurrences. The late Okamgba returned this time as a female. It was a shock to them all. But all doubts have been cleared by his solemn visit and the child's recent manifestation. Years passed, and Ezije began to manifest more signs. She was 15 at that time, but looked like a 30-year-overweight woman. She behaves more like a boy than a girl. Her interest in activities that men are likely to do was glaring. She was bold, fearless, and sometimes aggressive. That people her age fears her. She beats up anyone that dares her, especially boys, for she fears she might hurt a girl. She carries heavy weight. Carrying tree trunks is like lifting a broom to her. She showcased her strength the day a heavy tree was struck down by thunder, and as a result, the road leading to the village stream was closed. It was beginning to be a thing of concern when the news reached her ear, and all of a sudden, she has abandoned her chores and walked gallantly to the spot and swiftly lifted the trunk to everyone's shock. The news has spread, gaining her more attention. Also, she took back the spring water their enemies forbade them from fetching. The day she stepped her feet in the village spring, the contention ended, for she hastily fought the Ikwe people and forbade them never to be seen in that area. But the one that picked his people's attention more is that she's a wrestler just like her grandfather. She loves wrestling against her father's protest. A girl shouldn't wrestle, he will warn. But that did not stop Ezije. But I can't help it, Papa, she will softly say, looking gloomy. Besides, there's no rule that says a girl should not wrestle. She will firmly argue, and at that point the father will give up, watching her keenly. It clearly dawned on the family that she has come with a mission. The chief priest has sternly warned his father to support her, and that was all they do. The family became fearless. The people of Ojene land in general became free, for Ezine stood strong, defying their enemies. The king was taken aback as her news spread like wildfire. He has come to finish what he started, was all the chief priest could tell him. Absurd as a woman. The once keen Opara will ask, looking baffled, do you have a choice? The chief priest will question any time her news is being discussed. And it wasn't long when Ezije single-handedly marched to the gates of their captors and demanded a rematch. Bring the most powerful among you, she will yell in the royal court. She must be insane. The king has snarled. The people believed it was their hero that came back to life. The chief priest will answer, looking away from the king's scorching eyes. And what do you believe, chief priest? Igwe Okana will question angrily. They want to mock us. The confused, fear stricken chief priest will suddenly answer, do you think so? But she's as strong as a rock. Chief priest, and you still think he's a joke. He will scream, pointing his staff aggressively to the chief priest. Do everything. But do not let these people escape my grip. Kill the monster of a girl, he will scream. But after running away for a long time, and Edzije persisted in her demand, the people of Ogene have risen from their spit as a result of her gallant deeds. The king and princes praised her, for her strength is undoubtedly enormous, like one possessing the strength of a god. She defied the captors, and Ikwe kingdom was shared. shaken to her core with her fear. And when the time finally came, because they were left no choice than to bring out one stronger among them, the winner becomes the ruler. It wasn't difficult for the people of Ikwi to be defeated because Ezije dealt mercilessly with her opponent, and it ended in bloodshed. And that was how Ogene Land reclaimed back her glory, and the story of Okamgba had continued to live on. Love is sincere and never betrays. Okamgba took his life not because he was defeated, but because the king refused to believe him, even when he knew the wrestler was right. Again, life is so precious that suicide is never accepted as an option. Woe is he that trusted in the arm of flesh. Trust in the Lord. He will never betray or fail you. The end. Please subscribe and share this video. Also stay tuned for more captivating stories like this. Thank you.